It's click on.
We're
Click
there we go.
Live.
Of
we're
course,
live.
We will. We need a countdown.
if we
you
do
guys.
it, if we ever do it correctly, people will think it's like AI, and they will think it's not us if
We
we
have
launch
street for
correctly.
That's true.
people coming in from VTC who are really quick on the draw, who don't know us. I don't know why you'd be so quick and not know us, but good on you. We
They'd be
never-
quick
we-
because we're amazing.
We
Right.
aren't good at doing intros every time we stream. And we
Yeah.
stream
We
a
don't know
lot.
when it's live. I only know it's live because Anne Marie said yes, 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 yes.
Oh, Anne Marie. All
I
right.
just can never get enough of that
Yeah.
whole vibe.
Hello, darling.
We just wanna
Anne Marie is
give-
wonderful in several ways, and that is one.
we want to give just a couple minutes of riffing before you get into it, so that way people have time to come over, just to let people
Yeah, just
know.
let
That's
people trickle in. Sarah, hey, sweetie.
hi, Sarah. Let people in.
That was me.
Thank you for
welcoming
liking our
everyone.
intro, or lack thereof.
Or
So
lack thereof. Well, our lack of intro is our intro.
it's really our
That's true.
brand.
It's our
It
brand.
is now our signature. Yeah.
Our brand
It
is queer and messy.
Right. we also I think we extend that to our live engagements too, because we tend to like wander onto the stage like a deer in the headlights, not knowing what we're supposed to do. We're always like, oh, sit here.
I fully for they added a panel once for us for Vegas, which was very sweet of them, and so I was fully in a salt sucker costume.
Yes, that's right.
And so
that's
I was
right.
fully in a
Yes.
prosthetic, and I came out and was like, "Hello, I'm here to talk about asexuality."
Wondering the stage. This is a Star Trek thing,
Is
right?
that a
This is what we're
problem
doing.
with
This is
anyone?
Hilarious.
it's
Yes.
Star Trek. There's a ship,
Right.
and there's like
Right.
cute uniforms.
Yes.
Queer chaos goblin. Yes. That
Yes.
those are our
what-
people
that's what we were
specifically.
hoping
I should
for.
say my people specifically, and maybe I don't want to speak for anyone else, but my people specifically, queer chaos goblin.
Love it. Love it.
Not sure if like
That's
chaotic
Ace Rep.
good or Ace Rep. Hell yeah. I am
could
not
take
Ace, but
over
for
the
some
world
reason,
if,
Yeah.
with
Oh.
our lack of horniness. If
We have
just-
to wait. What we got? I know what we
focused.
got to do first. We actually have to say a huge thank you to the virtual TrekCon crew and
Yes.
Seventh Rule
Absolutely.
podcast crew
Yes.
Oh my god!
for having us back.
Yes.
We love doing this every year.
And
It's so much
For
fun.
continuing events like
After we
these, even
last
as
said
things start to
how
open up
crazy-
again.
Thank you,
Yes.
Ryan and the team, and we
And
love all of
resources.
you.
Yes.
So thank you.
Rock. What a delight.
We will have another fun panel tomorrow at
Yes.
7 p.m., 10 p.m.,
Yes.
Right. Okay.
10 type
7:10.
deal.
7:10.
and
It's like
then-
7-Eleven, but one less.
Yeah, except one less.
6:11?
And then Randy will be on Sunday
Yes.
for the
I'm
pre-game show or
presenting.
whatever it is. For
Maybe I'll wear
the
my
Laffy
Gucci
Awards.
suit. Who knows?
you absolutely should.
We'll see.
But I
The
wore it
Gucci
for the
suit
party
with the
there,
cat
right?
ear headphones.
With the cat ear
Right.
headphones.
Please, yes.
Oh, and
That is very
the-
on brand.
The Lambda Quadrant pin.
Oh yes, that will.
Yeah,
Here,
because-
Randy, there's your segue. There's your segue.
I would say,
for
yeah,
this
we probably
podcast.
should talk for a minute about who we actually are, right? I feel like we've
Oh.
not, we've
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah,
we've
'cause
just
we're
been
making new people.
we've just done big queer
We
messes.
are the ambassadors from the Lambda Quadrant. We are
Specially
a
assigned,
space
yeah.
delegation from a really queer quadrant of the
Like
universe.
the
That's
one.
right.
Like the one.
And
It's like
Yeah.
the
it's
Hollywood
actually
of the universe.
Stuff gets
in
real weird.
in our culture, it's really respectful and polite to be a hot mess.
The people who are put together,
So
we're all
please
offended.
respect that.
We're all offended. It's funny
Is
you
it-
should ask, Zoe.
Ask.
So if you or anyone you know is going on the cruise, we will have them there for free. We are giving them out to the fabulous cruise people. And if that's not the case, then they will be available at STLV this year in Las Vegas.
Yay!
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So Randy,
Very
myself, and Anna, we will be at the cruise. On the cruise, so come find us. Say hi.
I'll
this
be at
pale
home and sad.
skin is gonna
It's fine.
get sunburned.
Sorry,
She
Kelly.
can't stand.
Oh no! Oh,
I'm gonna get
Anna,
nice and
our
brown
cabin
and
will have
amazing.
like so much sunscreen in it because I will bring like
Zero.
pieces of it.
I can
So
bring
much
that
stuff.
2 SPF if you need.
No, it's like 50.
SPF?
It'll be 50 in our cabin.
I literally have 2 in my, and someone was like, you have 2? I was like, yeah, well, that's all I
That
really
doesn't do
two
anything,
bottles.
Randy.
I know. No, 2 SPF.
No, 2 SPF.
Yeah.
I can't
nothing.
process that.
Anna, come
I'm
on.
Irish. I'm Irish and Ashkenazi. There's no melanin here.
Okay, Anna, I just need to make it very clear that when there's confusion, what the answer is always the most ridiculous thing that it could be. That is the answer. When dealing with us specifically, I can't speak for the rest
Yes.
of.
Same, Anne Marie. This is why we get along.
Uh,
I am also anorexic.
so maybe we should introduce ourselves now. I feel like 5 minutes is enough time,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Oh,
folks,
yeah,
wanna
yeah,
get
yeah.
us around.
Let's
Yeah.
actually,
Hi,
Here we
kids.
go.
Welcome.
People
So
are
hello.
Hello.
We are gays, queers.
Yeah. How is this more of a proper
Yeah,
intro than what I
Yeah,
did?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I want to
Sorry,
intro
Randy.
us-
You're the best at this.
well,
Yes. Yeah. So yes, we are Lambda Quadrant. The VTC people are wonderful enough to have us here, despite our ridiculousness. But yes, we're a queer fan group who loves Star Trek more than anything in the whole world. And we go around spreading the love anytime, anywhere that we can. We've done things like put on the very first drag show at an official Star Trek convention, which was at Missions Chicago with our dear friend Jackie Cox, and that's also why we're on the cruise unofficially, but we're going to be there spreading the gay cheer everywhere and just loving everyone and trying to make everyone as happy as possible, unless they're homophobic, and then they'll be very uncomfortable, which is exactly what we want.
Also a desirable outcome.
Also, a desirable outcome.
yeah.
Oh,
So
great!
Oh,
Look, last
perfect.
panel wrapping
We
up
just got a
now. Hello
note
to
that
everyone
the-
coming over.
perfect.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that update.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
love it.
Dennis, thank you.
So Lambda Quadrant, we do a lot of educational panels, like this will be one of them, but also eventually it'll be one of them, maybe. But we also try and just create a safe space for people to discuss in ways that
Yes.
areas they haven't always been represented. So it's a safe space for the queer community, but we hope other communities as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah, some of the things
education,
that-
safe space.
A lot of the stuff that we get right is people who have queer children or something and are not queer themselves but want to have that discussion with us. So yes, absolutely, anyone and everyone. Yeah.
So basically the purpose of this panel, because I'm sure everyone forgot that it's seeing myself in Star Trek, because you guys went, "What is wrong with these people?" So
If
seeing
you
myself
see
in
this
Star Trek.
Hey, the chat's still happening. There's still people here, so I don't think we scared folks away. So
Okay,
there's
good.
some good
Perfect.
folks. Yeah.
I love it.
We're good.
So, and because we all know that Gene Roddenberry used Star Trek to illustrate this positive view of a diverse future and everyone coming together, but while we talk about that message being in the show, we don't always talk about how it resonated with people watching.
Right.
And I think that's really important, especially because people constantly say, "Well, does it really matter that does representation really matter?"
Right.
Star Trek is a perfect example that we know for a fact that it does, because we have a show from over 50 years ago, and we can track the impact it had on underrepresented groups that saw themselves represented and how they responded. Obviously, we have the famous story of Whoopi Goldberg saying, "Oh my
Yes.
God, there's a
She
lady
just
on television."
Did again.
She
Did you
ain't
see
no
The View?
Yeah. From
Yeah.
the view.
Just went through the whole thing again, and I was like,
McCartney.
bless
Yeah.
her. Oh my gosh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's not a maid, and it's a black woman, and we know
Right.
that Nichelle Nichols herself recruited on behalf of NASA using the fame of having been Uhura on Star Trek.
Right.
And yeah, hey everybody. And
Good
how she recruited Sally Ride. She recruited Mae Jemison. She recruited Guy Bluford, first black male astronaut. I mean, and that is real progress that we can track to Star Trek, and we can see how that
literally, because we have we have them saying it. Yeah. So
we can
literally
say it. So whenever people say, "Does representation matter?" Shut them up. That has been proven. I'm sorry, I'm done with this argument. I've been in academic circles and presenting at academic conferences, and I'm sick and tired of it all coming down to, is it? Yes.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
how this ended up starting as a conversation is because obviously we talk a lot about some of the good stuff that's in Star Trek in terms of positive representation. We talk about some of the misses and the things that aren't so great, and also some of the things that just seem to have not really been addressed very much. One that is making progress now, for example, that is still like probably not in the greatest places, like disability representation, for example.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
there's some really problematic
Discovery.
examples.
Better, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
but
some good examples. There's some
yeah,
problematic examples. They actually kind of weirdly enough like run the gambit in Star Trek, which is better than the majority of media that they actually do get those good ones. But it's still like, come on, guys.
yeah. Actually, Randy, can you highlight Travis Taylor's comment from Facebook? Because I think this is really important. So Travis said, if we're being honest, it matters to everybody. And I think this is a really important point because there are a lot of people who think that it doesn't matter. And what you tend to find, and I'm not a big fan of trying to pretend like I know what's in someone's head. So this is just speaking broadly, but what you tend to find is the people who say the most loudly that representation doesn't matter. It is generally because they are the kind of person who sees themselves represented in basically everything, and so they don't necessarily know what it's like to lack that, to not be able to see themselves in the stories that they write, that they see the world, right?
The old
Because this is
equality feels like oppression when everything is catered
Yeah.
to you 24 hours a day.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so and so that's something you commonly hear in the discussions when people are being kind of crappy about it are, like seeing a queer person in a video game, like it just totally takes me out of it, right? But I feel like when I interact in a large group of people and there aren't queer people around and aren't trans people around, like that takes me out of the world, right?
Yeah.
Because I live in a world where I exist for one, but like,
Yeah.
a lot of my friends and family do. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's
A lot of your
I've been on a
friends-
journey
Which,
figuring. Yeah,
which of your friends and family don't exist? I was like,
listen.
talking
I've been
about-
diving. I've been diving into philosophy lately, and that like I could do a whole channel about this question.
Well,
But
okay.
but all that's to say that I think the idea of this panel is that I think we had all shared some things with each other that I think are obviously all of these conversations are important about seeing yourself in Star Trek and why it matters. But I think in the group here we have some thoughts and some viewpoints that aren't necessarily the ones that you hear talked about the most. And so that's why, because I think it was Anna's idea originally that like, oh, we should do a panel about this. And we were kind of like furiously going back and forth in our group chat, like just like tossing out all of the different things. And so that's why we're here.
Yeah. And I wanted to go around and have us all kind of just introduce an aspect of our identity that we feel doesn't get represented enough or general, and whether, and things like that, and why. We'll just currently go around, kind of introduce ourselves properly in that sense. So I'm Anna. Aspects of my identity that are really important on the queer side of things: I am bi-romantic and I am demisexual, which is under the ACE umbrella. For those who don't know, ACE umbrella basically, asexuality is where you feel little to no sexual attraction. You can still have romantic feelings for someone, though there are some people who don't have romantic feelings, and that's called aromantic. And it's a completely viable way of living. There's a lot of theories that that's part of why there are certain like religious leaders who've been like, yeah, why is a vow of celibacy so hard for people, and the like, because for some people it's not hard, and for other people it is so difficult, and that's
and both
all
are
valid.
okay.
Both are okay.
You didn't explain
And
demi.
then-
Explain demi. You
And then
explained ace
demisexual
totally, but yes,
is basically that you're essentially asexual until you form a very, very strong emotional bond with one person, and then suddenly, surprise, you can actually feel arousal. And boy, was it a surprise. That's a story for another time. Anyway,
love you, Anna.
they said we were a late night panel, so I wanted to hint at that, but I don't want to go too
Yeah, not too deep. Not too deep.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Who's
gonna
next?
secret.
Thank you.
I'll go next.
Wonderful.
I'm Callie. My pronouns are they, them. I'm trans. I'm queer. I deal with mental illness. And the thing that I'm going to end up talking about a bunch tonight, I won't get into it now because we're not to that part of the panel yet, but I have recently decided to quit drinking because I realized that I was on a rough path with that. Like, no like serious rock bottom moments or anything like that, but just a couple of things that were like, this is going in a bad direction. And so I've decided that I'm not drinking anymore. And the thing that's been really rolling over my head the last week or so is how Star Trek deals with addiction, substance abuse, all of that sort of stuff. And so episode 1 of Picard this season had like I had some feels that I was not expecting from that. So that's where I'm coming from.
All right.
Who's going next? Who's going next? Me or you, Randy?
You're not wrong.
I think that's your cue, Randy. I think it's your turn.
I'll go.
Hot Tin Tin.
I'm Randy. I am just a gay dude. However, and when I was thinking about this, I was like, I feel like, I didn't want to not be here, of course, but like, I was like, I feel like my situation, quote unquote, is so like cliche, etc. But then I was thinking like through Star Trek and representation, and we had, as it like, not in a good, I'm not saying we had it in a good way, I'm saying we sort of had it in an allegory way, the way that we had everything else. We had like trans stuff happening before like actual gay people, because gay would be just, you have to like a guy and a guy together, but we had like symbionts and whatever that kind of gave us, a little bit of a hint of trans representation before there were actual like gay people on the freaking show.
Right.
So
Unintentional as it was,
that's where,
like, yeah.
Well, in that case,
they tried to write a gay allegory. They tried to write a gay allegory with the Outcast, and they wrote a pretty interesting trans allegory.
It was trans, yes, and so it's like, well, then fine. We didn't have gay people for the entire 50 years up until we had Discovery. So, that's me. But yeah, so that's that.
Oh, okay.
I'm also
good
weird.
job, Randy. You love it.
I'm also weird.
And I feel
Hi,
very
I'm
represented because of that.
I'm Nikki, and I'm going to say this publicly for the first time because I don't think we've actually done this publicly. I am pansexual, and it has taken quite a while to figure that out. And this is also for another topic another day, but for a very long time, I was kind of hiding behind the world of an ally. And so I'm kind of the same way of Randy, where it was like, oh, I don't really know, because for so long I passed as straight. And so sometimes I struggle with feeling like I take up space where I shouldn't be, even though my lovely friends Sue from Women at Warp, we got to do a shout out to Women at Warp.
Always got to shout out Women at Warp.
Like, it's not pie. Like, there's plenty of room and space for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if people don't know, so pansexual, sometimes it gets confused with bisexual a little bit, and people can interchange them. It just kind of depends on how you want to identify. I usually just say I'm queer, I'm pan, and my favorite way to explain it is actually from Schitt's Creek, where David goes, I like wine. I don't care so much about the label, right? Like, that's kind of how it is. For me, gender doesn't entirely play a huge role into it. There are physical aspects to it that I'm attracted to, maybe necessarily, but in the end, it's a connection with a person, right? Like, that's ultimately people that I am attracted to, whether it's just for friendship or whether it's for a romantic or a sexual relationship. It's more of a personality or the person themselves. So that's me. And it'll be interesting when I get to the talking about like seeing myself in Star Trek, because I think it has changed over time, right? Having watched it as a kid and then watching it now with all the new Trek, like, I have kind of some counterpoints and different things. And my journey of coming to realize that I am queer. I am truly queer. Like, I
see those pan flag colors in the comments.
Yeah.
Yes. Aww.
Love that.
Look, you're in good company.
I want to also just mention Dennis Koch's comment about you guys have probably not even heard of the TV show Soap. Sir, I am the Soap Gospel Choir. I own the entire series on DVD.
You have
weird enough.
You have poked the bear. You have poked the bear,
and I don't
Dennis,
want
my
to
friend.
go into it too much because obviously we're here to talk about Star Trek, but it is an important note because a lot of people don't know about it nowadays. But that was the first reoccurring gay character on television. Was that the series Soap, which was a parody of soap operas. It was a comedy.
Yeah.
It was a parody of soap operas, and Billy Crystal played the first reoccurring gay character on television. Honestly, he did a good job. I mean, Jody Dallas is easily one of the most stable characters on that show because everyone's very over the top, ridiculous, and you're like, oh, Jody's just gay. Yeah, he's kind of the sane one. I will say there are obviously some problems with the representation. Yes, the soap bear, you poked it. There are some problems with it because it was from the 1970s. That being said, because when I watched it, I was already in college, and it was way past the 70s because I'm in my 20s. But I watched it.
Star Trek.
And I watched
But
it.
Star
Trek.
There's a segue.
Well, but I watched it and I was
Star
very
Trek.
impressed by that representation, which I think goes back into like. So let's talk about representation from the 60s Star Trek, the 80s, 90s, and now today. And let's talk about how we've seen ourselves in everything. So, okay, back to Star Trek, but I did need to talk about soap.
No, that's good. I support you.
So, one Trek character that I've related to, but then kind of felt betrayed by, was Odo. I actually really liked that he had feelings for Kira, but wasn't a sensual character. I was okay with him having feelings for Kira, and sure, there was an element of maybe demisexualness when he actually got in a relationship with Kira. But I did he's suddenly very kind of sexual, but I did almost feel like they were kind of like fixing him in the writing of like, now he's learned about relationships, so he bangs. And of course, before he got with Kira, they had him with this random woman who basically, it's like he basically kind of decided to have sex with her because she mentioned he had bedroom eyes, and he was like, now I have a crisis, which is kind of an ace mood, I won't lie, of like trying to conform to other people's expectations of you. But it wasn't really, I mean, it ended tragically, but
Yep.
But I also feel like it makes sense because important to note that like being ace doesn't mean like never any sex ever under any circumstances for any reason, right? Like he could have very easily just been like, huh, I've heard a lot of people talk about this thing. Let me give it a shot and see what this is all about, right? Like, that makes sense.
And there was some interesting aspects, but it just wasn't, it ultimately wasn't really handled, I think, with the grace it needed.
Fair, I don't think that they planned it to.
I don't think they did either. Actually, no. I know they didn't. I know they didn't.
I don't think they were actually trying at all. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. But it was kind of, and it goes into a greater media trend. I won't talk about much, but like Castiel and Supernatural, there were a lot of people who wanted him to end up with Dean Winchester. Meanwhile, I was like, he's an angel. Love the idea of him just not being into sex. And I being queer, I was like, yeah, I love the queer rep idea, but also like,
but maybe leave it alone.
Maybe just can this one be mine? Can this one be mine? And then like at one, because so many things happen in that show. It's 15 seasons. At one point, he's human, and like the first day of being human, he has sex with like a random woman he met, and I was like, why?
Well, I mean, to be fair, like if you turned into an alien, wouldn't you be like, well, let's see what's going on?
but he'd always had a human that he could use, so I was just like,
sure.
If it was an anthropological thing, I would have been like, that I get that. But he was
Travis, to your question about experimenting, a thing to think about, and I had this is a journey that I have been on, because I'm not ace, but one of my partners is. I'm also polyamorous. I have a lot of stuff going on. But one of my partners is ace. But we do have sex sometimes. And I asked her about that. Because for me, it feels very like there is sexual attraction here. And I'm just like, I respect and believe you when you say you're ace, but like we also have good sex. And I just what is that about? And her response to me was like, I would have just as much fun with you playing video games, because it's just about doing something with you that like we're both having a good time. And like that doesn't make it not an ace thing. It's I think it's a lot about just rethinking your relationship with sex and how you interact with other people. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Can I pause? Wait, can I pause just for one moment and say thank you for the question? And as we talked about earlier, we are a safe space. So if people are watching and you have questions as we're talking, please put them in the chat. Like that's what we're here for, is to answer those questions. And again, reminder, we're not professional like in any way, right? We're just giving you our experience and our opinions, but please ask questions.
No, absolutely. And I think there's this element of and I do like that people in the chat have mentioned that Q, when he became human, he didn't even go for sex first chance. When he was sad, it wasn't like, well, some people have sex too, or even alcohol. The Data's like, when she's sad, Troy goes for like a chocolate, sundae, and then he's like, all right, let's do it. And that is so real. And like, as you said, Callie, like I have just as much fun playing video games with you. There's an ace term that's very big in the community of like, how do you know you're ace? If your partner says, hey, would you want to have sex right now, or would you want a piece of cake? We'll always choose cake, but we're not necessarily going to say, ugh, sex. There are ace people who are sex repulsed and who are uncomfortable with it. But they're also very sex positive aces who are going to go, yeah, it's always going to be cake. That's always going to be the choice, is essentially how it goes. So that was a good point, Callie, and I like that. And,
hell yeah.
Yeah. So Odo was my
I
thing.
think it's your turn.
I wanted to counterpoint very quickly about Q and the ice cream. When you're sad, you probably wouldn't choose sex anyway. Because
I don't know. I wouldn't know. Like that's me. I'm just saying I wouldn't know. Like I don't know. Some people have bad things.
Here's the thing. I would know, and yes.
That's fair.
But entirely respect people who aren't there. But for me, I absolutely am.
Sex it is.
Speaking of firsts on a streamer or in public, I mean, I've posted about it on social media, but it's not a thing. Like I make podcasts and we do live streams and stuff, and I've not really had the chance to talk about this yet. And it would be way too long a story for the panel thing. But suffice it to say, I've had a couple of things happen in life that have kind of pointed me towards like, you're developing a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and it might be time to like think about that. And had a really bad night. Some friends ended up staging an intervention, which didn't feel good, but it was 100% the right thing for them to have done, and I will love them forever for it. So I've been thinking a lot about how unhealthy a place I had gotten to with it, and decided that it was time for me to just like cut it out completely. And normally when we do these things, I talk about like, I am super anxious, and so I love Sylvia Tilly. All of the trans stuff. So all of my trill friends, Adira, of course, our new communications officer on the Titan and Picard. I'm so excited to get to know them.
I can't wait to see more about them. Yeah.
Played by a non-binary actor. Can we talk about that significance for a moment? Having the actual representation in the actor and the character at the same time, like. Huge.
Yep. Which is fantastic, because that's a thing that like when you talk about trans representation, a lot of the bigger name trans rep things that happen are like not trans people playing trans characters, and that's a whole very long discussion that we don't really have time for here. But I love that when we got Adira as a non-binary character, Blue Del Barrio is non-binary, Ian Alexander is trans, Gray is trans, and I love that they're doing things right. It feels like, and so I feel very good about that. But I've spent a ton of time talking about that in life, and I wanted to, especially this is like real quick, I guess, spoiler warning, and not really a spoiler warning because it's not a major plot point or anything like that. But towards the beginning of right, yeah. And so we see Raffi in District 6, and she is like really struggling with her addiction, and with the like, eventually like figure out like she's undercover, and it's like kind of a bit, but she also is legitimately really struggling. And I just like, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together on that yet. Because it's been a minute since I watched season 2 of Picard. So it just like, it didn't occur to me that like that was a plot point that eventually I was going to like run into during Picard. And so I saw that, and I just felt like, because in particular, there's a moment where she's holding this thing that it looks like a thing that you get drugs out of, but it's like just like a Star Trek like tchotchke thing. And it looks like she's like thinking really hard about it, and she drops it. And that was just like, I'm actually getting a little choked up now thinking about it, because I've legitimately had that moment where it's like, I'm gonna not actually, and I'm gonna feel good about it. And that's, if, I was talking earlier about things that Star Trek maybe doesn't always do the best at, or just like plain out hasn't really addressed a lot, is like addiction and substance abuse. And that's not to say it's not there. It definitely is there. But I don't feel like it's a thing that we've gotten like a deep dive in the way that we've gotten for other topics. And so that was like,
let's save
new.
that for another. We should no keep going. But I'm like, hint.
That's another panel.
Oh, absolutely.
We can go into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But, ooh.
Wait, how's the candle related to that panel?
Everything is.
I would also, Dennis, your comment, does anyone note that the gay community is often equated to alcoholism or substance abuse?
I got it.
That's why places like yours are a better place to go. So I want to be really careful, because I think it's really important to not be judgy about substance use of any kind, right? Especially because addiction is a thing, and some people really can't just drink and have a good time and do drugs and it's all fine. But there definitely is, this is way longer than we have time for the panel, but one, there is an overrepresentation of substance use disorder in the queer community, related to the fact that in a lot of ways it sucks to live in the world as a queer person, and that's often how we cope.
Right. And also, though, to Dennis's point, the whole the fact that this is a non-alcohol related discussion, and how it's a lot of queer events are only in places where you have to be 21, which which really upsets me, as knowing that there are so many people who, especially teens, that are realizing they're queer, might not have supportive home environments, and they need safe spaces.
Right.
That's why it was important for us to do the Trek drag show, because it was at the convention. It was family friendly, and we had people bring
there were
their
families
children.
there. Yes, yeah.
There were families there. There were young adults. There were teens there. They're like, this is my first ever drag show. We found out after the drag show that there was a young adult that came out to his brother because of the show. That's why we do some of the things we do. So, yes. An
extra special shout out to Jackie, because I thought it was really cool. Whenever something like that happened and there's a party and it's going to be fun and everybody's going to be having a good time, my activist brain is always can I get 5 minutes to just get serious and say something serious for a second?
Yeah.
Because obviously we want to have a party, we want to have a good time. It's a Star Trek convention. We're there to have fun. But I think anything queer related, we have to at least call attention to that, this is a celebratory space. We're doing fun things. This is great. But also stuff is real serious in the world right now. And we need to marinate on that for a second and take it away. And immediately Jackie was oh yeah. Halftime for the show. Halftime. Intermission. That's the word I was looking for.
It was halftime.
It's not a football game.
You gave a sports ball reference?
Damn it. I was like,
we
did
have
Rihanna-
half
Did she there? And I was like,
we have half
did she there? And I didn't see it.
Okay, I play roller derby. We have halftime in roller
That's right.
derby.
Oh,
So-
okay.
It's the
okay,
gayest
okay.
Get off me.
answer. Like, I want to be clear. That is the queerest
but-
type of sport.
Yes,
you play.
for sure.
Well, what about ice skating?
Right. I mean, that counts.
I mean, I can keep going. Let's not go down this road. Keep going.
But among all of that, like, it was also very important to her that, like, yeah, let's have the serious moment. Let's do the talk. And again, like, never miss the chance to shout out our Women at Warp friends, because Sue and Kennedy, at least, I forget if other folks, but
Yeah.
at least Sue and Kennedy, immediately as soon as the show was over, they were collecting Jackie's tips and like putting them together for us. Like, just like being there to help out and like do cool stuff to support. Just an amazing environment. And so yeah, so that's my entry is Raffi, and seeing the bits of struggle that she has had, because I don't think obviously it's not useful to like compare struggles and say like mine doesn't matter because someone else is harder, but I think it's also like actually a fact that it's hinted at that her struggles have been a lot deeper than mine have, and mine have been more just a like, oh, I need to like change directions a little bit. You know, I've not like had like any like rock bottom moments. I've not like really hurt anybody or anything like that. I just, you know, worried some friends of mine enough that they felt they had to have a conversation, which is not great, but it's also not a disaster, thankfully.
Right. But you know,
it's just
every person's thing like feels the way it feels to them, and it's just impossible to compare. Like, even if you had hurt people, as we know, some people are very comfortable with hurting people, and that wouldn't be a problem for them. They have suffered more, even though you didn't hurt anyone.
Yep.
You really can't even.
But yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see that moment where it's like, I very recently became deeply familiar with exactly what was happening in her head when she was looking at that thing before she dropped it. And I was just like, I know exactly what that feeling is like. And shout out to Michelle Hurd for like acting it. I have no idea what her personal history is, if she has one. But like, just brilliantly
so
acted
good.
because
I mean,
it was just correct.
So
I like, I question nothing about that moment. It was so good. So yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, good, strong one.
Really,
I was like,
slimy man. No, I'm good. No, I'm just gay. You go.
Too horny. Callie just comes out there.
Randy, I think you'd be doing things to talk about.
Didn't we just get done talking about not comparing struggles, Randy?
We did.
But to break tension, comedic relief is good.
Hashtag I'm just gay.
Just gay. I love it.
Just gay.
I can go.
Yes,
go.
Go,
I
please.
actually have a couple of different things, because when we had our questions or whatever, and I was first thinking about this, like, I was thinking about it as like, but I watched and I'm a TNG person at heart. Okay. I mean, I loved like almost all, if not all the new Trek. And
you acted like you're being interrogated. You're like, but I love them all.
I promise.
Don't tweet it. Don't tweet about me. Don't tweet, for the love of God. Don't make a tweet thread about me.
No hashtag new Trek. Don't do it. Yeah.
However, wait, side note, if there's anyone out there that says new Trek is not Star Trek or all Trek is not Star Trek, bullshit. Yes, it is. Okay,
I will personally fight you. I will drive to your house and fight you.
Whole other panel.
These are my friends
but so
that are in this.
when I was little, right, like I started watching TNG at like 10, 11 actually. And then watching reruns and stuff, because of course, as we all know, if you've watched some of our other panels, the very first episode I ever watched was the last episode of TNG when it aired. So, you know, I was catching the tail end there.
Right, what a start.
But like,
it's a great one, right?
Yeah, I know, it's great. But like, I was a curious child about things, and even in like junior high school, whatever, like very much like inquisitive, curious, loved science, like, and it was rare, right? Like to see women in science. And so obviously the person I identified with mostly at that point was Crusher, even though I was a young girl. But it was great to see a woman who was, you know, and at the time when I was growing up, I thought I wanted kids, right? And so it's like to see this mother who's also very independent, very strong, extremely intelligent, was problem solving like crazy. Like, sorry, Callie, I know you like Worf, but Worf was shitty at investigating crimes. Like
I feel like maybe I have not updated you because my feelings on Worf have evolved.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
okay then. Because it's like, but she
Good
was
to
the
know.
one
For you.
solving shit. Like, she was the one solving problems. I mean, come on, she's the one that defeated the Borg. I mean, there's just so many things that I loved about that character. Also, I just really wanted not blonde hair. I wanted red hair. I had blonde hair when I was little. I got red hair later. And then like it kind of has evolved, and a lot of the things that I like now are very similar. So it's Tilly, it's Tendi, right? Because there's still very much that like science nerd, very inquisitive, like to problem solve. But the other thing I realized was all of them, if I looked back at all three of them, they all had about a handful of close friends, right? But they usually had like one person that was like their one person, right? And you could call it a best friend, you could call it whatever, right? It could be a partner, it didn't have to be whatever. And that's how I am as a person, right? Like I've gone through my life where I always have, and it has changed, but I've always had usually like this one friend that I ended up calling my hetero life mate, because it was usually a woman, that I was very close to. And it changed as I grew up and whatever. But I also have just a handful of like super close friends. So that's kind of where I started. However, Callie, as you were talking, something else just popped up for me, which is completely different. It has not like, again, all of my stuff is more personality wise. It has nothing really to do with my queerness, although shout out to Georgiou because she kicks ass and she's pan, even though they don't actually say it.
She does say it though, doesn't
So-
she? She says it.
Does she say it?
Yeah,
I don't
she
actually
says
know
it.
if she uses
She's
the
like,
word.
I'm
Oh,
Pan.
okay
What's
then.
wrong with you? Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
she sleeps with she says Mirror
Like
Stamets
everybody's
was
Pan or something
pansexual.
like that.
Something like that.
But
Yeah.
And then
We'll
she
check
just
the
says,
tape.
"Don't be so
No, it's-
binary."
Like she said it.
It's in the scene where she's on the planet with Tilly, and Tilly
Yes.
assumes that she's going after the dude, and she's like, "Oh no, not him."
Yeah, no.
But then she sleeps with both of them.
She sleeps with both
Right.
of them. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Which
Um,
again, talking about seeing myself in Star Trek, just
yes, that was a Kevin Smith reference, Aaron. That was a Kevin Smith reference of hetero life mate. Yes, it was.
nice.
So, but the other thing more recently is, actually, I identified very much so with Picard in season 2 of Picard. So, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't, where have you been? Although you don't need to see it to watch 3, so I get it. Because I grew up with a parent who had mental illness, and I grew up with a parent, they did not commit suicide, but tried to commit suicide. And so actually there were the two very poignant episodes in that storyline and that story arc that were actually extremely triggering for me. And to the point where I was very frustrated that Paramount did not put a trigger warning on it, because and luckily, like, I had stayed up and I had watched the episode, the first one, and I actually tweeted out, hey, by the way, if anyone grew up with a parent that had mental illness, you may be triggered by this. And I tweeted that out, and I had several people comment, thank you so much, because I'm glad you warned me, because when I watched that would have hit me harder. And
yeah, because it's very explicit. It is not implied. It is
well,
just
and then the
there.
second episode, they show the suicide.
Yeah.
They play it backwards. They try to like do
Yeah.
a kindness cinematically, whatever. But you see the little kid, him as a boy, seeing his mother who just killed herself. Like, she just hung herself. And that's extremely traumatizing to people. And so it was very interesting, because what actually got me was, it's not actually Laris's character, but it's Orla Brady, whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, they should have put trigger warnings on it. What's Laris's in back when they go back in time? I don't know. Anyway, Orla Brady's
other Laris. Yeah.
Other Laris.
Yes.
Other Laris makes a comment to Picard about his trauma and how that doesn't go away. That gets carried throughout with you, and it affects your entire life and how you are as a person as you go through your life. And that is something more recently, as I had been going through EMDR therapy and consistently going through therapy and working through all of that, I have realized that my growing up was very much shaped by the fact that I had a parent that had a mental illness. So it was interesting that you brought that up, Kelly, because I wasn't even thinking about that for this panel. But that's very much a thing that I think you don't think about, that being a representation of mental illness in general, of being a way to have representation, you know, in media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And side note, I just want to shout out, I see like some really wholesome conversation happening in the chat about like gassing people up over sobriety and stuff. And I just think that's rad. I just wanted to say, like, you're all rad and I love all of you.
The chat pad's been hot this evening.
Yeah.
I haven't even been able to watch it. I'm like,
There was a
I'm like,
question
oh, there's
that
so
came
much
in that I wanted to get to
Yeah.
really quickly. Did you see
It was from Travis a while back.
Yeah.
Asking
Yes,
if
it
there's a
was.
Q-
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to talk about
I
that.
see you. I see you, buddy. I just didn't want to interrupt everybody, but there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, this is
It's-
there's a lot here.
interesting, because we
I-
just had this conversation.
Didn't
Kinda.
Yes.
I don't remember this conversation. Did I miss it? Did
So,
I miss the group chat?
No. So Travis, so in what we're talking about is, I actually just had this happen to me, because I
yes.
similarly, not in text Zoom, whatever, but I didn't actually come out fully, like, publicly to my parents until just a couple of years ago, 2 Christmases ago, something like that. And since then, I have had it confirmed from other family members that my parents actually outed me to some of my family members. Now, I do not worry that I'm very lucky that I have family that love me no matter what. But I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. And I put it in our group chat and I was like, should I be mad about this? Like, I don't really know. And so it's kind of one of those things, like, it's something that I think, so if you are the person that was outed, take some time to process through that so you understand how you feel about it. Because for me, like, I know my parents did not do that intentionally. They had that was not what it wasn't for any whatever mean reason or whatever. That was, I think, because they just didn't know how to deal with their feelings. And so take some time to process for yourself. If you find out that it's actually about someone else, lovingly and kindly say to the person who outed the queer person, to say, you know what, this is their story to tell, and perhaps next time you might want to check with that person if they're okay with it being out in the public. I mean, there's other ways to have those conversations, and this is actually another panel discussion that we want to have at some point, is kind of those, like, tips and tricks. I don't want to call it tips and tricks, but
Right.
Tips and tricks.
I have a very large, passionate, long soapbox about this that I won't go into all of here because time. But
yeah,
I think
sorry,
it is really important.
no.
No, absolutely. I think it's important to say that, like, what ends up happening is someone's like, oh, it's not a big deal to me, so it must not be a big deal to anyone else. And so it can, like Nikki said, it can happen with all good intentions and no maliciousness whatsoever. But I am extraordinarily passionate about the idea that you are the person who gets to set the boundaries around your story and your identity and what parts of you choose to share and not to share with other people. Because a lot of times the pressure that we often feel is that, like, somehow our being queer, our being trans, whatever, it, like, causes problems for other people. Like, it's like a burden for other people to bear as well. And it's, and I don't want to, like, discount that entirely, right? Like, my mom's world was just turned upside down when she figured out I was trans, because it was a completely new concept for her. But her attitude very much was like, these struggles I'm having are, like, my problems. They're not your problems, but I would love if you could, like, hold my hand and, like, walk me through it. Right. And, like, that's all great. But yeah, it is 100% your story to tell. You get to decide who does and doesn't know. And you also should never feel bad about setting boundaries. Like, I know it's hard sometimes with family members, especially, like, if you have, like, financial dependence on them, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it can be hard, like, in a practical sense to do, but from a moral and ethics standpoint, for the love of God, never feel bad about setting boundaries like that and saying, like, no, this is the story that I get to tell. and I get to decide the conditions under which other people know.
I would
Yeah.
also say that if you are the person receiving that from someone and someone comes out to you, I would also not assume one way or the other what they want, and I would ask.
Right.
Because for
Yeah.
me, when I came out to my family, I was honestly like, yeah, please just tell everyone because I don't want to deal with it.
So
for me, I
valid
was
though.
like,
Like
please
absolutely
just, yeah, fine,
valid.
whatever, you tell them, whatever. Like, I don't, because honestly, I just didn't want to have to go to everyone and be like, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay. I'm like, yeah, fine,
Yeah.
you tell them, whatever. So just
And
ask
then the
if someone
13th
goes,
person
like,
you tell is
you
like,
want
am
me
I
to tell people or
am
not?
I the
Because
first person you
honestly, like,
told?
what?
Sorry,
yeah,
I was
here.
like the 13th person you come out to
Oh,
at that point,
right.
they're like, oh my god, am I the first
No,
person you told? And you're like,
no,
no.
I'm gay. Leave me alone.
Like,
Yeah.
Move, I'm gay.
Just
No,
tell
Move
your
on,
family.
I'm
You
just
can
gay.
tell everyone.
But yeah,
Hashtag
like,
I'm just
I'm just gay. The moral is like don't assume one way or the other, right? Because it might be more comfortable for them, and you don't know, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
if someone, I would like if it were me, I would be like, so do you want me to keep that, just to me, or like, would it help you in some way if I like? So for me, I was like, yeah, just please, it's fine, whatever. But yeah, for
yeah.
you, Nikki, you're like, oh God, no, don't tell everyone. I don't want that. So you
I
never
didn't
know how it's
actually
going to
see.
happen
This is
with others.
where, yeah, I didn't actually say that, but we only
Oh,
have 10
sorry.
minutes left, so we
Oh,
gotta save
okay.
this for another
Oh,
panel. But
okay, gotcha.
we have
best
10 minutes
question
left.
the best question you can ask: how can I support you? What do you need from
Yes.
me?
Yes, there you go.
Some
There you go.
version of
Yeah.
that question.
Perfect.
Leave it
There
open-ended.
you
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, there
So
you go.
since we only have 10 minutes left, and I do want us to get back to the topic at hand, but
I know,
I
I
do
know, but I
love
love that our
the
panels go
it's
all
been
over,
great.
but all good.
They're gonna be like a
But
panel on trees, and we're gonna end up talking about Klingons and you know what. So it's fine.
well,
Candles.
it's more like we start a panel on Klingons and end up talking about trees. Like, but
Kelly, did you come up with another idea? Like, I'm just like, what was that face?
Klingon
Nope.
trees. Okay,
Nope. Nope.
so
Moving on.
Oh, I know where that went. I know where that went. Okay. Anyway,
no.
this may be in the evening, but it's not quite Lambda after dark. Got it.
Anna, you were
So-
saying.
No, so I wanted everyone to kind of go around and share what's some representation they would like to see in Star Trek. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what we discussed, but it can be in some other ways. Like, I know personally, I would love to just have a character who's just like, oh, I'm Ace. And I would like, I know that sounds like
Yeah, totally.
overly simplistic, but how
No.
great would it be if 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 like back in the old days, if like Kirk, when he's kind of like hitting on someone and someone was just like, oh, I'm flattered, I'm asexual, and then he was just like, is it, and he was like, oh, of course, is it ace, where on the ace spectrum do you fall, out of curiosity, like, and it's like, oh well, or the person was like, oh, it's a personal question, or they were like, oh well, I'm actually demi, and so and they say like, so hey, if you want to put in the commitment, maybe, but the thing, but I know you're a captain, you're going off to your next port, and I'm not ready for a long distance. Great, cool. How, I know that sounds so mundane.
I'm here for that.
Jet could
This
be
one.
Ace,
I'm here for that
and
one.
that would be a great
I
one,
could
because,
absolutely see that. Yep.
Yeah.
it would be great to have that, of like having just this character who had a marriage with a wife that she loved, and her just
Right.
being like, yeah, but I'm also Ace, and my
Right.
wife
Yeah, that's
was
totally fine.
Yeah.
Whatever she was.
understanding of that.
Yeah.
Is
I
there an
also have
Ace
a personal
character in
headcanon
Lord?
that Tendi is Ace.
Yes.
Of course, that's not canon
Ooh.
or anything, but that's my headcanon. I'm almost
I like
positive.
that headcanon.
Ooh,
Yeah, I mean, I think
I can get behind.
wanting someone to say the word is, I don't think that is like shallow or unreasonable at all. Like, it's really important because obviously, this show takes place hundreds and hundreds of years in the future. And obviously we hope that at the time the show is taking place, no one cares. It's barely a conversation, yada, yada, yada. I get it. But also, like, that show is being made for an audience today,
now. Yes.
which is like, I mean, that's the way that they
leeway because
they bridge the gap in
out.
discovery, right? By just saying like it's
I'm
they
non-binary and like
right, and just the
Yes.
very short conversation, but they
Right.
said it out loud. It wasn't an allegory. It wasn't,
Right.
it wasn't implied.
Right.
And that's, I mean, I think it's vitally important to have those
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
said explicitly. So yeah, I don't diminish your wish for that.
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
What's some other wishes?
Kind of along those lines, I think it would be great, very similar to how they did the like teeth brushing scene with Stamets and Colbert, showing the normal part of their lives, right? Like,
Yeah.
just showing it. And it's very similar to just saying it. Like, this
Yeah.
is normal. This is how we are as human beings, right? Like, I think that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy some of the newer Trek more, in regards to, like, even just as little as, actually somebody said it recently in one of the PR press things for Picard coming up, just recently, about how in the 90s, like with Gene, he didn't want to have any conflict between the characters, and this season's going to be rife with conflict, right?
Yeah,
Like, just to see those normal everyday human conversations that happen. But in regards to queer people, to literally have it normalized, it is happening more now in New Trek, and I would like to see that continue, right? And continue having the actual actor playing the character, right? Representations within the actor and the character itself, right?
Because it's also just great for the writers to have that as they start to write, so that you can just kind of you have that last vestige of proofreading of you have the person being like, hey, that's not what I would say, like, kind of,
right,
and it's part of why it's good. Like,
my want is a bit of a super specific one, and obviously, like, we have Culber and Stamets, and I love them both very, very dearly. But I want to see queer men in Star Trek who are allowed to be as, like, sensual and sexual as someone like Georgiou is.
Yes.
Because and again, I want to be clear that this isn't a criticism of Culber and Stamets' relationship. I love them, and I love how, like, tender and vulnerable and caring they are for one another, and that is a thing that we absolutely need. But a trope that we see, all throughout Star Trek is, like, the bi pan coded, like, mirror universe villain who is, like, like, sexual in a very funny, like, sensual type way. And I want to see queer men who are allowed to be that, because I have lots of queer men friends who are that, and it's something that it is, like, almost completely absent. So, like, again, I love the wholesome masculinity that Culber and Stamets show, but, like, I would also love to see queer men who are allowed to be as, like, fun and wild as the women often are. That's a big thing for me.
Many gay men actually are.
Like, the energy Garak has in his first scene, when he just is like, like, literally circles Bashir and is like, it was nice to meet you, Doctor. Like, that energy. Like, a little less
Hugo,
predatory.
yes, Ransom or Riker especially.
Please.
I
feel like, and it's my wish is for to see gay representation absent of trauma. That's my
yes.
wish.
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely,
once again, we have Culber and Stamets, but oh my God, why did you have to die and be a mushroom zombie? Why couldn't you just have a happy life, or a life, where you have a couple of problems you got to deal with, but you're not a dead mushroom zombie? Like, why
right.
is that always
and,
the thing?
And I've gone back and forth on this, because part of me is thinking, like, it would be very weird for any character in that show to not have some pretty heavy trauma, just given, like, what happens in the universe. But I also think that the trauma doesn't have to be so specifically focused in on their relationship, and it doesn't have to define the entirety of their relationship the way that I feel like it often does with those two. Like, it can be a thing that's there, and it can be a thing that they talk about from time to time, but it really does feel like that's, like, the entirety of their story is that.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally feel that.
Yeah.
And on to the just on that, I thought Garak was gay. So did Andy Robinson.
Quickly.
Yeah, he's got, like, only a couple of minutes. If
I
we
know,
run
just a
long,
couple
I think
minutes.
we'll be okay. But yeah.
I do, yeah. I don't, but I don't want to. I don't want to interrupt the poor next person. To the point of all the the actors were had all of this stuff in their head. From what I understand, like they wanted that to happen, but it was the network that disallowed these things. But if you ever meet Roddenberry, who is very much his father's son, he's the nicest guy in the
Yeah.
whole world. Totally like
Oh my God, yes.
like not even like you don't talk to him like you talk to him and you don't even feel like he's an ally. You just feel like he's a totally nice dude. Like he's not trying to be an ally. Like it doesn't feel like any of that. He just doesn't care across the board because he's just such a cool, nice dude. So
Yeah,
like he got that from somewhere, right? So yeah.
right. Yeah, to gush about Rod very quickly. One of the first times that I met him, I was like, "Oh man, like I feel like Star Trek has done so much right about like queer and trans stuff." And he's like, "Oh really? Because I'm not sure that I do." And I, okay, hell yeah, Roddenberry.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing a panel with him in Vegas 2 years ago, and we ran into each other at the bar, and he just like asked me questions about being non-binary for like 2 hours, and not in a like, oh, like I'm on a safari and I'm learning about this exotic thing way, just like, wow, that's like a human experience that I don't know a ton about and I would love to. So are you cool talking about that with me?
Yep.
And I very much was. And so yeah.
Okay, we're at time, and I don't want to stomp on.
We are at time.
We're at time.
Yeah.
So the next
Thank you,
one,
everyone.
if you wait, hold on, wait, quick before we thank
Yeah.
you. So the next one, if you check the video, if you check out the video description, the next thing that you should go see is Matt Boardman, who's the VFX artist on Star Trek Discovery and the Orville. So go check him out. His thing just started. I just heard it kick in. So please go check him out. And that's after us.
Yes. And then tomorrow we will have another panel at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Join us. We are going to be defending our unpopular opinions, theories, whatever it is of Star Trek.
I heard some folks say that they want to know what my hot takes are about Worf. That's where they're going. So come join us.
So come back tomorrow.
Hit us up on socials at Lambda Quadrant.
At Lambda Quadrant.
Ask us questions. We love you. If you're going on the cruise, we'll see you at the cruise.
We'll see you at the cruise.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.